I have long argued that any playwright with any directing skill whatsoever should direct the first production of his or their plays, just to keep that pure line from page to stage, not interrupted or interfered with by another artistic voice. And here I get to talk to a playwright who's actually doing that. John Kolvenbach, whose play Stand Up If You're Here Tonight has played literally around the world, from Chicago to Paris to Boston, and now premiering at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. John, was your plan always to direct this thing, or did you realize no, I must keep it to myself?
Yeah, originally, yes. So my plan is always to direct my stuff in the first production, just as you say. I don't think it's probably a good idea for everybody. I don't recommend it as a general rule. But for me, I like to, I mean, part of it is being a control freak, I assume. And then part of it is, I have an ambition for the play that begins with the writing, and you don't know if that ambition is even on the page until you've got it staged. And so I'm trying to take it all the way from my initial ambition for it all the way to its life in front of an audience. And then it does help me with the writing to direct it myself. If I can't make it work, then I assume it doesn't work. And so yeah, I find it helpful for the script, and also I love it. I mean, obviously writing is a lonely business, and you are just by yourself with a pen, and getting to work with, in this case, Jimmy Ortlieb, is such a joy. And yeah, so I would say yes. And, Jimmy is a brilliant actor, and also an actor like many who needs to be, he needs boundaries and
Sure.
a world. So it's something I've become sort of expert at. So I think I'm pretty well qualified.
I mean, it's a fascinating process because you write the play and you think it's one thing, and then you read it and you go, "Oh, hang on, I've written something different than I thought." And then you hear it by an actor, and then you put it on its feet. At what point in the process for you do you make these discoveries? And did the play become different or evolve in a way once you began you're looking at it with your director's eye versus your playwright eye?
Yeah, I mean, so Edward Albee says that the play is never as good as the idea that's in your head of the play, and I don't know if that's quite true, but my rule for myself is I if I see it work once, then it works. But until I see it work once, it might not work. So certain sections of the play, you're trying to work on them. You think the writing would lead to this kind of life on stage, but sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes you can try it a million times and it still doesn't. And so you really then have to look at what you've written. But as soon as it works once in any circumstance, anywhere with any actor, then I put it in the box of things that work, and that sort of helps me. But yeah, I would say that with this play in particular, the audience is such a big part of it. The interaction between
Yeah.
the guy who's doing the play and the play itself and the audience is such a big part of it that we really had to get it in front of people. It was, sometimes you can tell from a reading, sometimes you can tell, rarely, but sometimes from a Zoom reading.
Hmm.
But this one, we had to actually get it physically in front of people before we knew.
Do you how would you describe the play? Because I've now seen it twice, and I only feel like I have the beginning of a handle on how to talk about it to others.
Yeah, so we're at the Fringe, obviously, and one of the tricks of the Fringe is you need a 10-second thing you say to people passing by as you hand them flyers. We haven't come up with one, but what I would say is that a guy walks into a room and he's trying to make the audience that's in front of him into one organic being. He's trying to both eliminate the distance between the audience and the play itself, and he's trying to congeal, sort of make a community, but more than a community, bring the audience into a kind of oneness. And so he takes us through a series of existential exercises to try to achieve oneness, which is obviously harebrained and
Right.
almost impossible. And so his ambition is very difficult to realize. And then every time you do the play, it has a different sort of path, even though the words are the same. So whether we actually achieve a kind of oneness or a unity or not is sort of night to night, but it's a fun ride either way. That's what I would say. I know that's long and it still doesn't work. And I have people say to me after they see it, I still don't know how I would describe this to another person, but that's just what it is.
Well, it's so interesting again with an actor of Jimmy's caliber. He grounds it in such personal, deep need that it doesn't become. It's not an existential workshop led by some guru. It's it's led by a man in crisis who desperately needs this connection and senses that the audience needs this connection as well. And that's what to me is so great about the play, the piece, the production, the event of it, is that it's not a TED talk. It's not. I'm just going to tell you my story. It's not. It's not therapy for either you, the writer, or Jimmy, the actor. It's a process of engagement, theatrical engagement, which is at the very heart of why we go to the theater. And that is also not a 10-second pitch or
Yeah,
explanation.
you haven't solved it for us. So
No.
Jimmy and I talk about this all the time. The play dates to the pandemic, and the first time we did it was right after the pandemic. We did it where people were still wearing masks and they were still separated by 12 feet, and that whole theatrical reality. And so every time we remount it, which has now been 5 or 6 years in a different place, we always have the conversation of why are we doing this now, and what's the sort of most urgent need? And maybe unfortunately, every time we do it, those answers are right there for us. The idea that the audience needs community, the idea that people want to believe in the same thing for a little while, the idea that people want to be in the same room with the same sort of heartbeat and the same breath.
Yeah.
There are reasons every time we do it, and the reasons actually seem to be getting more and more urgent as the country, frankly, is more divided. Just giving people an opportunity to be together and to sort of have the same experience has an urgency to it. So yeah, Jimmy's urgency is born sometimes of politics, sometimes of the personal, sometimes of things in his own community, sometimes in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
It depends on where we are.
Um, One of the other lovely things about it is that the one person show, particularly here in Edinburgh, is fraught with traps and tropes, and how you managed to vary the tone and the tempo and the audience engagement in such a lovely way. Was that there on the page, or was there a certain point at which the director, John Kolvenbach, had to step in and maybe solve some of the issues of the playwright, John Kolvenbach?
Yeah, well, so the play on the page, I hope, has a very defined structure. But
Mm.
I would say that even the most expert actor, if they were to look at it, might not see it. And so the structure is to me the same structure that and this can be different for different people, but for me it is the way that a playwright might approach a play, right? So you're going to bring as much of yourself, as much of the personal as you can to try to reach the audience. And so what the guy in our play does is he starts off bringing some of his personal life, and then he realizes over the course of the play that this is a tough nut, that this audience in particular is difficult to reach, and what he's trying to do is almost impossible. So he has to bring more and more of himself. So the structure of the play, such as it is Jimmy's guy having to go to further lengths to get to us. So everything he does is deeper, hopefully richer, sometimes wilder, sometimes more maniacal, sometimes just sort of more personal. Um, Hopefully, eventually, to his end, which is to reach us, which is to establish a connection to us. So that's the structure. Within that, there's a million different beats, which I've talked to Jimmy about and defined for him. I
Hmm.
don't know in another director's hands. I mean, it depends. If it's a good director, of course they could do it. And I would want to talk to them first, though, about how this thing goes.
Well, and that's the challenge. I just talked a few weeks ago about the play that I just wrote that's having its production in Colorado, which I wrote it, and I think it's interesting because of XYZ, and other people might find it interesting or not because of ABC or whatever. So I think I know what's going on. Do you find yourself, or is this a way you even process the experience? Do you find yourself writing like a director, or when you're directing like a playwright?
Oh, that's interesting. I don't write like a director. I really try to lose myself as much as I can. I have techniques that I sort of have developed over the years and that I believe in. And the objective of all those techniques is to try to get as unself-conscious, as undirectorial, really,
Mm,
as I possibly can, to really get to the point where I don't know what's going to come out of me. And then obviously there's rewriting where you're refining all that stuff. But yeah, usually what happens to me is that there's a wildness, hopefully, in the writing process. There's a kind of
mhm.
unhingedness. You're really free, and for me personally, that means that there's a there's a quality of madness in writing. Yeah, and so when you show up as a director, that's not very useful. That quality of madness, I've seen that from directors. That's not it's not the most useful quality. So then, yes, you have the interesting thing of almost working in reverse, where you're directing your own work. You have to go back and do sort of script analysis on yourself and figure out, like, why did I write this part? What is this about? And
Right.
what was my intention here? So you do end up a very I always get left brain and right brain mixed up, but you do, I think, do right brain first and then lots of left brain on yourself. And sometimes you think, oh wow, that is why I wrote that. I didn't know that at the time, but
Right.
that's what that's about.
Right. That first draft is that you at your purest and most hopefully uninvolved and just expansive and creative, and it's the second draft when you realize that when you're looking at the thing and now and you have a thing that you can edit, and you begin to look at it more critically, or discovering. You realize the thing in your head is now the thing on the page, and now you're discovering what the thing on the page is, and
Yeah.
what it can be, and how it should be brought out on stage with an act.
Yeah, all that, and then ultimately, when I mean, the one of the great things for the writer about the theater is that the audience will tell you what your play is, and so
Yeah.
you get it in front of people, and you can think things about it that just aren't true, and
Right.
so the audience will tell you, and sometimes their disengagement tells you a lot, and sometimes their engagement tells you a lot, of course.
Well, and speaking of audiences, it's played in L.A., Chicago, Boston, Paris, I believe, and here at Edinburgh, which is not a British audience; it's an international audience.
Yeah.
Have you discovered different reactions to the play in those different places?
Yeah, very wildly different. So the LA audiences, maybe unsurprisingly, are, part of the play is it's asking a lot of the audience that's there that night. The LA audience, because there's a lot of performers and a lot of people in the entertainment industry, are so happy to give Jimmy everything he wants, and it actually can be a bit of a problem. It can be better if they're a little bit more reluctant. We had great audiences. We were at the Huntington in Boston, and those audiences are lots of university people, lots of scientists, lots of
Hmm.
people connected to, Harvard and MIT and all this. So it's a much more analytical audience than some,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
they were really fun, and they experienced it in a kind of, in this way sometimes, and so that presented some fun challenges. The audiences in Paris were wild because maybe only half of them English was their first language.
Mm.
That was interesting. And the audiences here, as you said, are extremely mixed. So you can have a Scotsman sitting right next to a young kid who's come from, who knows where, Bulgaria, to see
Yeah. Yeah.
plays for the first time. It's pretty wild. And that too, the mission of the play in front of an international audience becomes extremely exciting for me because we're trying to make all these different kinds of people into one gelatinous glob, and that really is that's I like that ambition.
That's got to go on the poster.
Yeah.
Turns an audience into one gelatinous glob.
Yeah.
Do you have another project going on right now, and will you direct it when it's done?
I have a couple movie things, which are in that state, which a zillion movie things are, which is we're trying to attract the right cast in order to raise the money to. But I just wrote a new one, and my ambition is to either direct that one or have it die on the vine. So we'll see. It will either be me or no one. So yeah, I mean, I haven't ever directed a film, and so it's all new to me. And I have written for the movies before, for other people to direct, and this is a it's a smaller project. It's a sort of more personal project, and so hopefully we can get there. We are out to actors. I can't tell you who, but we're out to fancy actors now, and it's that whole process of trying to get a fancy actor to say tentatively yes, and then you go to the financier, and might they give you $1 million, and that's where we are. So we'll see. Hopefully, we'll have an update today.
Fingers crossed. I can't wait to
Yeah,
see whatever the next thing is.
thank you.
This podcast is a production of the Reduced Shakespeare Company, reducing expectations since 1981. Go to reducedshakespeare.com for performance dates, actor bios, email newsletters, and so much less.